Hi students, in today's lesson I will discuss one of the important topic of object-oriented system design subject, and the topic is prototyping. So now before coming to this topic, I just want to tell you that if you guys have not seen my last lesson where I have discussed everything about use case driven approach of system development, then watch that video as well. Okay, and before starting this video I just want to tell you that if you guys have not subscribed this channel yet, then subscribe it and watch this lesson completely, and if you like this lesson then don't forget to click on like button. Okay, so now let us come to our today's topic, which is prototyping. So now this prototyping is one of the important and useful activity in system development because it reduces the total development time for any development team. Okay, so it's an activity where the development team develop a demo of the real application, and with that demo they will try to understand the requirements in a better manner. And this prototype is not only useful for development team, it also equally useful for the client as well. From the development team's point of view, the development team can clear all the confusion between themselves and between the customer. And from the customer's point of view, if customers has any confusion in their mind, then all those confusions will get cleared out once the customer see the prototype. So what we understood with this prototype is a prototype is a model of the real system where it depicts the external and internal behavior of the system, but that prototype is not a real model, it's just a demo of the proposed system. Okay, and with that system the development team will try to understand each and every minute details of the system which they will be going to develop. Okay, and once that prototype is been developed, then development team will going to consider this prototype to move their development process according to this prototype. Okay, so once they get confirmation from the client on the prototype, then they won't be having any confusion on the product which they will be going to develop. So automatically the development time gets reduced. Okay, so now here I have written few points, so we'll try to understand what a prototyping is. Okay, so now the first point says it's a version of the software product. As I have said, it's a version, it's not a software product, it's just a version, or it can be call it as a demo or model of a software product developed during the initial stages of the life cycle. Yes, as I have said, this prototyping activity is been performed during the initial stages of the software development life cycle. Why they need to do all these things at the very initial stages? Because in the initial stages itself they want to clear all the confusions between the initial requirements and between the client. Okay, once they have a demo or the model of the software which they will be going to design, then they can show that model to the customer to take the customer's feedback and take the approval from the customer and started moving ahead in the development process with this prototype. Okay, that's why, because they don't want to waste their time, because they don't want to waste the energy of their employees, the time spent by their employees on the product, and they also don't want to waste the money spent on the project. That's why as possible as they want the clarification on the product or the requirements on the very early stages of the system development life cycle. Okay, so that is why the activity of prototyping is being done at the initial stages of life cycle. Okay, now the next point is purpose is to experiment the system. Yes, here the purpose is to experiment, to figure it out the weak points, to find out those requirements which have not been covered, which have not been listed by both development team and by the client. So the purpose of developing this prototype is to experiment. Okay, now the next point is to fully understand the system. Yes, with this prototyping the development team as well as the customer can fully understand the system, and after this there won't be any confusion between both the parties. Okay, now the next point is it allows customer to comment in terms of usefulness. Yes, when the development team have a proper prototype of the system which contains outer functionalities as well as inner functionalities. If the customer find that the prototype is been built as per their expectation and based on the given requirement, then customer will give the comment on that prototype, and customer will come to know that the developed prototype is useful. Okay, and now the next point is allow the customer to understand system without confusion. Yes, the same point which we have already discussed. It can be used to avoid the confusion between the development team as well as the customer. So now there are various categories of prototyping, and here I have listed down those categories. Okay, now the first category is horizontal prototype. So a horizontal prototype is a type of prototyping where the development team will mainly focus on the external appearance of the system. They will never going to put so much concentration on developing the inner functionalities of the system. They will only focus on designing the outer structure of the system. That kind of prototype is easy to develop, because in that process of prototype development they don't have to work on the internal design of the system, they just have to design the outer design of the system. Now the next prototype is vertical prototype. Okay, so in this vertical prototype the development team needs to focus on both the external or outer design and structure of the system as well as the internal functionalities of the system. What are the functionalities of the system and how the user will going to operate the system and how the system will going to interact with the user. All those functionalities needs to be covered in the case of vertical prototype. And now the next analysis prototype is saying it's used as an aid to understand or explore the problem domain. So this analysis prototype is also one of the type of prototyping where they will use this type of prototyping as an additional aid, as an additional tool to explore, to analyze the entire domain of the system. These are the various categories of prototyping, and I'm sure you guys have understood what is prototyping and what is the need of prototyping, and we will also see what are the advantages and disadvantages of prototyping. Okay, now we will see what are the various advantages and disadvantages of designing a prototype at the very initial stages of system development. So now the first advantage is it reduces the total development time. Yes, as I have said in my earlier explanation that it reduces the total development time, because at the very beginning stages itself both the development team as well as the customer will become confident. Both of them now know that what type of product development team has to develop and what type of product customer wants the development team to develop. Okay, so after this there won't be any confusion in the minds of both the parties. Now the next point is avoids confusion. After a successful prototype, the confusion will get resolved between both the development team and the customer. Next, provide a real-time model of working system. It provides a customer a working model, but it's not a real model. Okay, it's just that it depicts the features and functionalities of the real model, and it somewhat looks like a real model, but it's not a real model. So here provides a real-time model of working system. So with that model, customer can see a working model of the system. Now the next point is useful in understanding requirements. If we have a model or a prototype, then we can clearly understand the requirements of the clients. And then now the next one is requirements can be incorporated efficiently. Yes, if we have a prototype, then we can efficiently make use all the requirements in that prototype. Next one is reduces the risk of project failure. When we have a final prototype and if that prototype is approved by the client, then there won't be any chances of project failure. Okay, because both the parties are now confirmed and assured. Next point is reduces the risk of project failure, because when there is no confusion between the development team and the customer, so obviously there are very less chances of project failures. Reduces the risk of money loss. Yes, since we are doing this activity at the very initial stages of system development life cycle, so we surely will be ended up with the good product. Okay, and we will not lose the money. Provides better clarity. Yes, we can have a better clarity between the system and the users. Now the disadvantages is additional time needs to be spent on designing prototype. Since we are developing a prototype which depicts some of the or most of the features of a real time system or a real world system, so it will take time, and the development team has to spend a separate time slice for developing that prototype as well. It becomes useful when at the very first time when they develop the prototype, client approves that prototype. If the client keep on adding more and more requirements in the prototype, then the development team again and again they have to make changes in the prototype to make the approval. So this will take time, and that will become a disadvantage, because if they have to do this stuff again and again and again, then obviously they will be losing too much of time in their development. So these are some of the advantages and disadvantages of prototyping. Okay, so I hope you guys now clear about the concept of prototype. What is prototype? What is the need of using prototype or developing a prototype in the development process, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of prototyping process? Okay, so that's all for this lesson, guys, and I'm sure you guys know pretty much clear about these concepts, and I will see you guys in my next lesson.